Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into some pretty intense stuff today.
Definitely intense.
Yeah, we're talking about the violence in Chicago and the rapper Lil Durk
Mm-hmm.
allegedly being connected to it, and we've got a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, a lot of different sources.
Yeah, news articles, court records, you name it, and it's not just about reading headlines though.
No.
We're going to try to untangle this web of events, the motivations, look at how justice is actually pursued, in these cases.
Well, it's definitely a story that you can't just jump into. We need
Uh-huh.
to avoid being judgmental and really look at, the larger picture.
Yeah, and I think a good place to start is with the case of Octavia Redmond.
Oh, absolutely.
This was a postal worker who was murdered in broad daylight.
It's awful.
Yeah, it was July 19th, 2024,
Wow.
in West Pullman, which is in South Chicago, and Redmond's, delivering mail, just doing her job.
Right. Just another day.
And then tragedy strikes.
Terrible.
She shot multiple times in broad daylight.
It's unbelievable.
The getaway car, they found it abandoned and burned, and then there's surveillance footage showing the shooter fleeing masked.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But thankfully, they did, after 2 months, track down a 15-year-old suspect who was arrested in Iowa.
Oh, wow.
So he is currently awaiting trial. But
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of speculation online about this. Is Lil Durk involved? Is his crew only the family OTF are they involved?
Right, right.
But it's really crucial to note that there's no credible link that's been established.
Yeah, we got to be careful about, jumping to those conclusions.
Absolutely. Yeah, and sadly, Octavia's case isn't unique.
No, not at all. There are, unfortunately, a lot of other heartbreaking cases that have happened in Chicago.
Yeah, and another one that comes to mind is Stefan Mack.
Oh, right.
So this was on January 7th, 2022,
Okay.
and he was leaving the Youth Peace Center.
Of all places.
Of all places, right?
To be shot and killed outside of the Youth Peace Center, that's just...
It's hard to fathom.
It really is. It's like, what is the hope?
Yeah, he was leaving that center in Roseland and was ambushed.
It's just tragic.
A security guard who was with him survived.
At least there's that.
Yeah, and it took almost 2 years for charges to be filed.
Wow, really?
Yeah, one suspect, Anthony Montgomery Wilson, has pleaded not guilty,
Okay.
and the other suspect, Preston Powell, is still a fugitive.
Still out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because with Redmond we're talking an arrest within months, and with Mack it's years.
That's a huge difference. Yeah. What do you think that says about the system or how these things work?
Well, it really makes you think about how investigations work, right? Like what?
Like what leads to some cases being cracked quickly
Right.
and some taking years or never even being solved?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are the factors at play?
It definitely highlights how much variation there can be in those investigations.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it.
Yeah.
You've got witness cooperation, which can be so unpredictable.
Oh, absolutely. You've got the availability of forensic technology, the backlog at labs, even just, a detective's workload can be a huge factor.
It's true. Some detectives might be juggling dozens of cases at once.
Right, exactly. So
Wow.
are they going to be able to devote the same amount of time and resources to each one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a complex system, and it doesn't always move at the same speed for every case.
Right. And that actually is a good segue, I think, to talk about Lil Durk,
Oh, okay.
because he's been recently connected to a murder for hire plot.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, against another rapper, Lil Pab.
And this is recent, you said.
Yeah, this is recent, and the alleged motive
Okay.
is retaliation for the murder of
Oh, okay.
Lil Durk's friend and collaborator, King Von.
Right. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, back in 2020.
Years ago, but yeah.
So, and King Von's case, I think, is another piece of this puzzle that we need to look at,
Yeah, definitely.
because it was November 6th, 2020, in Atlanta. There was a confrontation outside of a club.
Between King Von and another rapper, Quando Rondo, and his entourage.
Right.
And shots were fired, and King Von was tragically killed.
Yeah, that was a big story.
He was. And the suspect, Timothy, Lol Tim Leaks, claimed self-defense.
Oh, yeah.
And he was citing Georgia's Stand Your Ground law.
Right, right.
And so this law essentially allows individuals to use deadly force if they reasonably believe that they're in danger of death or serious bodily harm.
Even if they could have retreated from the situation.
Even if they could have retreated from the situation.
Right. Yeah, that's always a point of contention with that law.
It is a controversial law,
Right.
but in this case, it was ultimately decided that Leake's actions did fall under this law.
Oh, wow.
And so the charges against him were dropped.
So no one was ultimately held responsible for King Von's death.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is wild. And you know, we do have to emphasize again that the allegations against Lil Durk are still just that. They're allegations.
Yeah.
The investigations are ongoing.
Right.
We can't prejudge the outcome.
Absolutely. Due process and all that.
Yeah, but I think all of these incidents taken together, they point to something much larger and incredibly disturbing.
I definitely agree with that. It's like there's this much bigger problem working beneath the surface.
Yeah, and what do you think that is?
Well, I mean, we're talking about gang violence.
Of course.
The influence of the music industry, this culture of retaliation that seems to just be fueling these cycles of violence.
Right.
And I think these stories, the lives that are lost, they reflect these really deep-rooted societal challenges that we need to be addressing.
Yeah, we can't just keep looking away.
No, absolutely not.
And, you know, it's easy to get caught up in the details of each case, but I think what we can't forget...
What we can't forget is the human cost.
Yeah.
You know, the families that are shattered, the communities that are traumatized.
Yeah.
These aren't just names and headlines, you know?
Right.
These are real people with lives, with families, with dreams, and their lives were tragically cut short.
And, you know, it's easy to forget that when we're talking about, you know, rappers and feuds and things like that.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the sensationalism of it all.
Right.
But we have to remember that there are real human beings who are suffering as a result of this violence.
Absolutely. And, you know, as we wrap up this deep dive, you know, here's something I think we should all be thinking about.
Okay, I'm listening.
You know, what responsibility, if any, do artists like Lil Durk have in addressing the violence impacting their communities?
That's a really good question.
It's a complex issue. There's no easy answers.
Not at all.
But I think it's a conversation that we absolutely need to be having.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep exploring this issue, and keep forming your own informed opinions.
And don't be afraid to have those tough conversations, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really thought-provoking discussion.
It really has. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
It's been great.
We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.